How do we decide what is a woman, what is not a woman? And the common um, theme that is in the transgender community and anybody that is um, affirming it would say that a woman is anybody that presents as a woman, but that's a double negative and that doesn't really work. And so I took a look at the Merriam-Webster dictionary, and I think I would hope or I would think that an academic would take that as definition as an accurate definition. So when I look at that, a woman is defined as an adult female person. And the dictionary defines a female as a woman or a girl and an individual of the sex that is typically capable of bearing young. Gender and sex were interchangeable. And when we use the term gender, I think that's where everybody is being fluid with the term. I'm not thinking that's what they're doing, but that didn't happen until the late 20th century when society began to use the term gender to refer to behavioral, cultural, or psychological traits. Uh, this is an attempt to change the definition. And so I want to go a step further and define gender identity, which is something I refer to in many of my videos, and that's a person's internal sense of being male, female, some combination of male and female, or neither male or female. So that's your internal sense. That doesn't mean you are. That means that you have an identity that's there. And the definition of identity is the distinguishing character or personality of an individual. And so, because your personality, you can have personality to be all kinds of things, but that doesn't make you that. We know that there's a biological component to differentiating between men and women, and men are not typically capable of bearing young, whereas women are typically capable of bearing young. And so we also know that a transgender woman is someone who identifies with the characteristics of a woman, but is not capable of bearing young. A transgender man is someone who is more typically capable of bearing young and is female. This person identifies with the characteristics of males, but is biologically a female. By definition, transgender women are not women, and transgender men are not men. And as of September 2023, the National Institute of Health estimates that 1.4 million people, or about 0.6% of Americans, experience gender dysphoria. Now, I think that number is accurate. I think that's a true number. However, the number of people who claim to be experiencing gender dysphoria is much greater than that today, especially among young people. A substantial portion of children that are in school are exhibiting gender dysphoric traits. And so I would think that that would be what they're identifying as rapid onset gender dysphoria. I do not believe that rapid onset gender dysphoria is truly gender dysphoria in the sense of what the 0.6% are experiencing, because they've known it from as long back as they can remember, and they've experienced it as early as they can remember. I do think that both people who are experiencing gender dysphoria from as far back as they can remember, and the people who experience rapid onset gender dysphoria can overcome gender dysphoria. That said, if an adult believes that they cannot overcome it and they are totally convinced and they make the decision to move forward with transitioning, that really is their business. That's none of my business. And I really hope they don't do that. I hope that they find alternatives, but That's their choice, and I'll respect their choice. If they do choose to do that, they are still the gender that they were born as, their biological sex. I do not believe that gender is fluid and that it changes. I think your identity is fluid, and you can believe you have tendencies towards the opposite sex, which I don't think there's any question about that. I think there's always been feminine men and masculine women. I think that part is fluid, but but you are still either a male or a female. If you pass away and your bones are recovered 100 years down the road, you will have the DNA of either a male or a female. It won't say this person was a transgender female or transgender male. I guess if you had surgeries where you had modifications to facial feminization surgery and so on, in that case, they may be able to say, well, you were transgender because you had surgery, but they still would identify you as either male or female. There isn't another sex that they would identify you as based off of the structure of your body and the DNA that comes from your bones. You'll still have the same chromosomes that will be identified there. Unfortunately, it seems that young people are identifying as gender dysphoric at an alarming rate, and that's, like I said, considerably higher than 0.6% of Americans. And so this is a dangerous thing because body modifications are happening to people at young ages. Women are getting double mastectomies, and there are a significant portion of them that are detransitioning, and the impact on the detransition is severe. And so someone who detransitions is someone who identifies at some point as transgender and begins to take hormones and undergo surgeries only to realize that they are not gender dysphoric and return to presenting as their biological sex. And according to a 2024 study, 582 detransitioners, 53.3% reported previous psychological issues and vulnerabilities. 46.7% cited pressure to transition from friends, family, partners, or professionals. That's alarming. Okay, that shouldn't be the impact. However, I can confirm I've experienced when I did detransition, and when I moved to just present as my biological male self and live my life that way, that I got pushback from people. I had a negative response from people, especially those that are active in the gender affirming area, because they don't want somebody detransitioning, because that works against, and that proves that transitioning is not always the right decision. And in fact, it quite often is not the right decision. I know people who have transitioned, that are not happy with who they are. Now, that's not to say that they're not happy with the transition. I haven't had that conversation with them, but they were unhappy before, they were unhappy after. Nothing's changed. They still have a negative outlook on life on the people that I personally know. Now, I know that there are probably many people who have transitioned that are very comfortable in their life and they function very well and they go on and they're satisfied with what they have done. I personally don't know them. I'm not saying that they don't. And I also believe that if you do go through transition, you modify your body, that it is possible, it's quite reasonable and possible for you to be comfortable in your own skin as who you are if you work through underlying issues that you have and you overcome the real reasons for your struggles. And so just because you've modified your body doesn't mean that you can't be happy, that you can't be confident and at peace in your own skin. I don't think that has anything to do with transitioning. Uh, and admittedly, for most of my life, I did think that that was something that was important to be able to get there. And now I know the truth. I know my truth of my experience is that that's not the case. That I could have been happy before transition and not needed to transition. And uh, in going through transition, I found out that I still had all my same problems, that it didn't fix anything other than it removed anxiety from being found out. And because now everybody knew, I didn't have that anxiety. I did get anxiety when I stopped transitioning and went back to just living as my male self. And that anxiety was, when is the gender dysphoria going to come back? And then when I learned that the dysphoria is not coming back, then that anxiety went away, and I no longer had that anxiety. I think that that's an experience that's difficult because people have to grow with that. They have to experience that, and they have to trust. And so, in my case, um, I stepped into church about 6 months after I decided to no longer transition, and I read the Bible cover to cover, and I worked through it on my faith. I got involved into recovery programs and worked through all these issues that I had all my life and overcame them and became very secure with who I am and loving myself, which I found out had nothing to do with the gender dysphoria. Specifically, I do believe that because of the way I felt, that aggravated the desire for the gender dysphoria and caused me to place blame on my struggles as being caused by gender dysphoria. The gender dysphoria did hold me back in that I didn't deal with my real problems that I had because I was so focused on the gender dysphoria, is that being an obsession, that being an anxiety that just constantly was feeding on there. And so I put all my attention into that when I should have been putting my attention into my real life problems, struggles, and how I saw myself personally and how I felt personally. I should have dealt with that, and I think that the gender dysphoria would have alleviated because it wouldn't have had the power over me that it did for so long. And so, I don't know if that makes sense. I hope it does, but I hope it opens up questions for you. Now, I have people come back and they say, okay, in previous videos, they say, show me the scientific proof. Well, if you want to go to sciencedirect.com, you can get information on that survey. It's a 2024 survey. Um, they narrowed it down to 582 people that were transgender and who had detransitioned to get that statistic, and you can go and find it there. As you may know, um, well, obviously, from what I've shared with you, I did struggle with gender dysphoria for most of my life, and it started as far back as I can remember, and it ended almost at 50 years old. And so I do empathize with people who are struggling with gender dysphoria. My experiences give me unique insight, and when reading documentation on the latest trends, I'm especially concerned for young people and adults. I think that we need to speak out. I think that there is a conversation that needs to be had on both sides of the issue, but it seems that the trend has been for the last 8 years is to squelch anything that opposes gender affirmation, and the data is not being produced publicly in a way that it should, and I think that it's not right to simply yell somebody down and say it's hate, or to say that it's dangerous or damaging. Well, it's dangerous or damaging to not have a serious discussion about it, not have present all the facts on it, to not look at all options. That's dangerous and damaging. And so you have to be, with this issue, you have to be thick skinned to come up. And for parents, you have to be strong and you have to question um, the outcomes. The thing is that it's a difficult conversation, but you really should consider all the other issues that are happening besides the gender dysphoria. You know, how your kid feels if you're dealing with a child. You need to look at what's going on. What are all the other problems that are going on? Don't just sit there and focus in on just the gender dysphoria and think everything else will go away. It will not go away. And I can point to, if you go and you look at the case of like Jazz Jennings is having life difficult issues that the gender disorder or that transition didn't solve. And Jazz has gone through a complete transition and had been on the spotlight. But if you sit there and you look at what Jazz is saying in several of the episodes, Jazz is coming out and saying, you know what, I'm not, I still don't know who I am. I still don't feel comfortable with who I am. And gender dysphoria, or the transition and all the surgeries were supposed to fix that, right? Well, the fact is that we need to work on our issues that we're struggling with, that on our self-worth and our self-esteem, and focusing on those issues and get those issues out of the way. And in my case, I know that the gender dysphoria would likely have gone away or diminished to a level that would have put me into a situation where I wouldn't have took hormones, that I wouldn't have spent all this time stressing out over it. I it's my opinion that anyone who feels discomfort with gender issues should connect with a qualified psychologist or psychiatrist. And I strongly recommend that psychiatrist or psychologist not be gender affirming. I see far too many counselors that are gender affirming, that they're trans supportive, that they're trans um, activists, and this is not a good way to go, because if you have other issues that are um, underlying that you can take care of, that will um, alleviate your trans desires or your trans feelings, then you need to be able to experience that, because transitioning may not be right for you. And a gender affirming professional is going to automatically go towards the gender issues and look at that as the key factor, that they're going to be more likely to drive you to transition and not to explore other opportunities for you to move away. A good psychologist, a good psychiatrist, they're going to be focused on helping you uncover what's inside of you. They aren't going to be pro or negative to transition. They're going to help you uncover what it is that's going on with you. And so that to me is what people really need that are dealing with gender dysphoria. Now, it's my opinion, and you can take it however you want. You can go with however you want, but I know what the costs are of it. I've experienced it and I've seen it happen. And in my uh, journey and my research, as I continue to see people who are transitioned, as I see activists in the way that they behave, I see that I see signs of, I think there are a lot more people like me than we know, and I think they're being harassed, and they've been squelched, and they've been told to shut up, and now it's not the time to shut up. It's the time to share your experiences. I think it's really important to do that. So, um, you know, going to a gender clinic, I want to speak again. I've talked about it before. I want you to realize what it means when you go to a gender clinic. Most gender clinics will likely be affirming and not seek treatments that would avoid transition. They tend to be people and organizations that drive people to transition and think that that's the only way to do it, uh, because you're gender dysphoric. And, you know, when you go to a gender affirming clinic, you may deal with, like I did, a physician's assistant who issues you a prescription for hormones. They do a request for a blood workup, but within 15 minutes, I was issued a prescription for spironolactone and estradiol to start taking hormones. Just because I came in, I was dressed when I came in, so they're going, obviously you're dealing with gender dysphoria, so this is the way for you, and here's your prescription, and you're on your way, and that's it. Nobody ever called to follow up. Nobody did anything of that. They just kept on issuing the prescription. I didn't have follow up, and you don't want that. I mean, even if you're determined that this is the right way for you, don't you want to have the best care, medical help, and the best psychological help to ensure that you're doing the right thing? And I get it. There was a major clinic at the University of Iowa that had opened, and it was like it would take like 3 to 4 months. I can't remember how long. It might even been 6 months for me to get into. And that clinic, you had to go through psychological evaluations and so on, and it did cost money. It was expensive, and I didn't have the money, so I didn't go to them, and that's disappointing that the money's not, or that 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 I couldn't get in there. But so instead, I went to a clinic that did abortions that decided to do um, also do gender affirming care, and I literally walked in 15 minutes. I'm out. Yep, I'm gender dysphoric, and I had a physician's assistant issue the diagnosis, and it was that's not right. That's dangerous. And so, with that, I hope that you'll spend time looking for alternatives. I mean, to go through transition to literally, like I have heavy facial hair, and I went through electrolysis and um uh and did laser, and after 8 years, my hair's still there. It came back. I there was a time when I literally spent a couple days and I pulled every hair out of my face and to get my face smooth, and it was painful, and I did that. And I get people with dealing with gender dysphoria. We go through a lot to try and look how we think we feel. And so there's so much there, and it interferes with your life in a major way. And so I want to share with you that if you're at all questioning, if you're at all like think there's no hope for you, there is hope for you. There is possibilities. Go out and search detransition in Google and YouTube, and watch videos of people who are just like you, or people that are like your children, your friends, your family, and just get educated on what the situations are. Now, the good news is I'm really happy with who I am. I feel really secure with who I am, and I don't struggle with the gender issues anymore. My self esteem is strong. I feel confident, and I have a good life. I mean, it's like I have the life that I could have had, had I had the resources and had I taken the time to really focus in on my underlying issues that were there at a young age. But that didn't happen. And for young people today, that opportunity is there. So consider all the resources. If you feel like you still need to transition, so be it. But at least look at alternatives so that you have an opportunity to consider what's possible for you. I want to thank you for watching this video and taking the time and having the interest to hear what I have to say. I hope that this video helps. I'll keep on making more. And gosh, just do your research. And so have a blessed day. And thanks again for watching.